exploring the practice of bioregional organizing. And I want to emphasize the words in sequence. Exploring means we're going to uncover part of the world. We're not going to be comprehensive. We're not going to go in and comprehensively and definitively define what is the practice of bioregional organizing. We're going to begin to explore it. We're going to focus on what it is to practice bioregional organizing. And then we're going to really get a sense for why bioregional scale organizing often doesn't happen, because a lot of practices that people do don't manage to get to the scale of holism that are needed for us to get to bioregional organizing. And so we're going to be exploring this through a variety of lenses, including some of the structures and some of the ways you go about creating an organizational pattern. And then also we're going to go into the spirituality, the deep feelings, the emotional sensibility of what it's like to be a bioregional organizer. And we're going to blend those together into one conversation. So, first of all, the way that you practice bioregional organizing is not about the scale at which you are organizing. It's that you stand inside the world with a bioregional mind. Now, what do I mean by that? A bioregional mind means that you see the world the way that the bioregion does. You see the world by the way that water organizes life. You see the world by the way that cultural history shapes the present. You see the world by the kind of ecosystems that are present. You see the world by the kind of landscapes that are present. So the first and foremost thing is to cultivate a bioregional way of seeing and experiencing the world. Now, when you do that, when you stand in the world with a bioregional mind and you look out into your bioregion, one of the things you see is you'll see a lot of regenerative projects. You'll see permaculture farms. You'll see reforestation projects. You'll see habitat restoration. You'll see community work in building trust. You'll see all kinds of regenerative projects, but most likely it will be a fragmented landscape, meaning these regenerative projects are not working together. They're not organized bioregionally. The holistic point of view that the bioregional mind has is not how the regenerative projects are organized, which means your bioregional mind can start to see the potential connections between the fragmented parts. You see the weave of potential. You see that that regenerative farm, together with that permaculture center, together with that Native American history center, together with that salmon restoration project, whatever it is for your landscape, you see how the landscape can weave them together. And as you start to see through your bioregional point of view that these fragmented and isolated regenerative projects could be woven, then the next step is to become the weave. That you as a human being arrive at a permaculture center and comment on how you see them as part of a larger world. Wow, what you're doing here so beautifully supports that cultural heritage center on what happened to the Native Americans. Or, wow, this regenerative farm can help with watershed restoration of this watershed. Did you know that they're working on habitat restoration for the beavers on the rivers over there? And so as a bioregional mind in the world, you see the fragmented landscape, you see its potential connections, and then you enter into participation with the bioregion by actively weaving in your conversations, in your projects, in the way that you show up in the world. Now, what's interesting about this is to be the weave, you have to act on reality. You have to weave what's really there. And this is one of those pieces that's really important, but doesn't get talked about nearly enough, is that standing in the world with a bioregional mind means that you see how fucked up your bioregion is. You see the contaminants in the water. You see the scars on the land where the old growth forest was cut down. You see the horrors of what's happened to the indigenous people. You see the world as it really is. Because standing in the world with a bioregional mind is not seeing it through a colonial narrative that erases history. It's seeing the living systems as they really are. And this grounding in the discernment of reality will, if you stay in it, will lead to the awareness of planetary collapse, take you through a grieving process, and lead you to collapse acceptance if you stay in it. Now, why is collapse acceptance so important to bioregional organizing? It's so important because if you don't see the world as it really is and you try to intervene, you could very easily make things worse. You could continue to perpetuate the extractive colonial system by not critiquing it. You could fail to see that something like bringing in a bunch of solar panels just means that you're scraping the ocean floor for lithium. And maybe that's not truly regenerative. And so this grounding and collapse awareness and acceptance helps you to move beyond more superficial technology fixes or other sentiments that come from an earnest place of wanting to help, but actually don't move beyond the extractive system itself. And so that means that you help perpetuate the harmful system, and then it lasts longer. It gets bigger as it's lasting longer, and therefore it does more damage. And while you don't intentionally mean to participate in that, the lack of collapse acceptance means you might do things that do more harm without realizing it. So this grounding and discernment of reality and collapse acceptance is fundamental to bioregional organizing. We are organizing bioregions for after the collapse of the global system, after the collapse of nation states. And so we're actually seeing the collapsing process, which is how I can comfortably talk, not really, somewhat comfortably talk about how the United States is eating itself to death right now, and the wealth hoarders and the billionaires are actively eating the scraps of the dying corpus. How can I say that? Because I see the collapse of an empire. And if I'm not discerning that reality, I might participate in partisan politics in a way that perpetuates the system. So these kinds of insights are fundamental to bioregional organizing, and collapse acceptance, while it doesn't get acknowledged nearly enough, means you're actually designing with reality as it is. And you can't be the weave and weave the bioregion without working with what's really happening. So you have to acknowledge that the fishery system has collapsed, that the local industrial fabrication system, the factories have collapsed, that other things have collapsed. The indigenous livelihoods have collapsed through colonial invasion. These kinds of collapse awarenesses are part of bioregional organizing. So, as you stand in the world with this bioregional mind, what happens? What do you do? Well, one thing is you see a lot of bullshit. You see a lot of people talking nonsense, delusional, idiotic, absurd. Why? Because they're not responding to reality. And so as you stand in this place, one of the first things is you feel pretty alone. You see the nonsense of people saying, like, let's go out and shop to protect the consumer economy. Like, that's insane, because the supply chains are part of the extraction that's destroying the Amazon rainforest. You know, these kinds of things, you see through the bullshit, which creates a feeling of separation and isolation, which is difficult to live with. But then, because you're seeing through the bullshit, you can start to act on reality. You can stack rocks in a stream bed. You can grow a permaculture garden. You can work with local people who are land defenders for the last of the ancient forest. You act on reality. And as you act on reality, reality is organized by living systems. So you can really let ecology organize you because you're acting on the existence of the watershed. You're acting on the reality of the grassland savanna. You're acting on the reality of the climatic process that gives you a particular kind of rainfall. You know, you're acting on the reality that ecology gives you in your bioregion. And this dissolves even more illusions. For example, when you do permaculture, you learn you're not in control, the microorganisms are. You know, you dissolve the illusion of human management as control by collaborating with living systems. Dissolving the illusions emerges through the practice of letting ecology organize you. And this is how you find the others, because you can sniff bullshit, you act on reality, you find out you're a little strange in the old world, and you start to discover other people who think like you. Now, here's the important thing. When you find the others, hold each other, love each other, care for each other. support each other, because this way of living right now, I'm going to be honest, it sucks. You're going to be surrounded by grief and trauma and conflict, and it is not pleasant. So what you have to do to be able to explore the practice of bioregional organizing is you have to stay with the grief you feel as you confront reality. You have to let yourself feel it, because if you don't feel it, you're not responding to what's real. But then you have to keep going. How can you keep going? By finding the others and holding each other. And this is why bioregional organizing is about suffering together and not ignoring the suffering alone. Because, by the way, if you go back and just check out in consumer culture, you're still going to be alone. You're just going to be alone in a delusional nightmare. But if you're actually restoring the beaver habitat in the river, you're helping the fish come back, and the bears, and the wolves, and the forest. And so you're finding the others in the non-human world as well as in the human world. And this is a lot of what the practice of bioregional organizing actually is. So, said another way, bioregional organizing is a spiritual practice, and it's a spiritual practice that requires devotion to life. Because when you start to see through the bullshit and act on reality, you're going to be confronted by two things. One, is there a whole bunch of human beings that are not paying attention to what's really going on, which can invoke a lot of fear and anxiety and dread. And two, you're going to see a lot of incredible beauty in the world that is being destroyed. And as you see those two things, as hospice worker Stephen Jenkins will tell you, to awaken in this time is to awaken weeping, to awaken crying, to awaken in grief. Joanna Macy talks a lot about this too. And so the bioregional organizing work is a spiritual practice of devotion to life that separates you from mainstream culture, that invokes a lot of unpleasant feelings, and that brings you into connection with life. And as you come into connection with life, you will feel a lot of pain, but you will be exposed and invited into mysterious and incredible beauty. Like when you, like I have done, pull grass and native bushes and shrubs come back and all of the flowers arrive, which are beautiful, but then the pollinator insects come. And you get to experience the magic and mystery of bees. The beauty that arrives is indescribable, even as you experience it. And it is all spiritual. So bioregional organizing is a spiritual practice of devotion. It is not a profession. It's not a job in the capitalist market. It's something deeper than that. So, what is the practice of bioregional organizing? How does it work? Well, one of the things about bioregional organizing is you let the land organize you. So imagine this shape as like a watershed where you have drainage of water from many places coming to a common point below. If this is your bioregion or the watershed that you live in or the landscape you live in, this place is already organizing itself in multiple ways. One is that every single place on Earth has a unique geologic history. The movement of tectonic plates, the continental uplift that creates mountain ranges, the carving out of the landscape by water, the shaping of the soils by climate, the establishing of ecosystems by the kind of climate and geology that's present. Each place on Earth is shaped and organized by a unique geologic history. That which gave rise to the Sahara Desert is not the same as what gave rise to the Great Lakes. Every place has a unique geologic history that is shaping and organizing the patterns of life in that place. And every place on Earth has a unique ecological history, where that ecology emerges in partnership with that unique geology and meteorology that gives rise to soil types and climatic zones, which gives rise to types of forests or grasslands or deserts. And the ecological history of place organizes the patterns of that place in a unique way. The ecology of the forests of the Northeast in North America is not the same as the ecology of the forests of the Amazon in Brazil. The ecology of place is unique in each place. And if humans exist in your bioregion, there's a unique cultural history, giving rise to the patterns of economy, the way that you grow your food, the kinds of textiles you use to make clothes, the way you build your houses, using snow to make igloos or using cedar to make lodgepole houses. Cultural history gives rise to the way that humans find harmony with the ecology and geology of place. And as you let these geologic, ecological, and cultural histories tell you how life is organized, it gives rise to a holistic and diverse story of your place. And as you come into a bioregion, like if you used to live in New York and you moved to Sacramento, you now enter the story of the Sacramento River and of the Bay Delta, Bay Area region of California. So the story of place is still happening today. And when you are in a place, you are part of the unfolding story. Part of the story of place might be that someone cut down trees to build a house. And now you bought that house and you're moving into it, and you become part of the story of that place. Now, here's what's amazing. If you look at the structures and the organizing patterns of geology, ecology, and culture about the story of place, what you will gain is a whole systems understanding for the health and well-being of the ecosystems and the humans of that place. And then you can say, well, how did that whole systems understanding tell me what is healthy, what is not, what it used to be, what it could be? And from there, you can create scenarios of the future to imagine regenerative future possibilities. What if we restored the beavers to the Colorado River? What if we protected the last grandmother trees of the old growth forest in the Pacific Northwest? How could that lead to different regenerative futures than we have today? And then the design of bioregional regeneration and the organizing around that design emerges in those scenarios of the future because you've taken the time to create these whole systems understandings. So the practice of bioregional organizing is structuring your story of place into whole systems understanding, imagining regenerative futures, and then organizing around them. What does this look like in practice? For those of you who are with me on the bioregional activation tour for Regenerate Cascadia, you'll recognize this slide. So what you see in this image is a Google Earth satellite image of Eugene, Springfield in Oregon. So that urban landscape above us, actually up is west because I've turned the image sideways. And if I was to ask you in this image with Eugene, Springfield, which is a city of about 200,000 people, the second largest population center in Oregon, if I was to ask you, where are the degraded places in this landscape? It's pretty easy to see them, isn't it? Because it's the places that are brown and white. These are the watersheds. These are the river valleys. These are the alluvial floodplains. And why are they bare and denuded? Because that's where people went in, cut down the forest, and established agriculture. Now, what's interesting is when you look at these, like if you look at that middle one, that's a watershed drainage area that drains into the McKenzie River, that then drains into the middle Willamette, that then goes up to Portland, Oregon, and drains into the Columbia River. And that middle green area, its elongated length is only about 10 miles long, and its width is about 3 or 4 miles wide. So that's an area that is at a human scale for organizing. If I was to ask you, how would you organize to regenerate this landscape? You can see the most degraded places are organized by watersheds as agricultural zones. So what if you were to go into this middle green area, and maybe there are 30 or 40 farms, and you were to get all of those farmers to come together and transition from monoculture grains and grasses to agroforestry systems, they could regenerate that watershed. And what this tells you is that you can imagine regenerative futures at the scale of landscapes such as a watershed. So that's how you might restore this little watershed. But what if I zoom out? Okay, so now I've turned the map the other way. North is pointing to the left. Portland, Oregon on one end, Eugene, Oregon on the other. This is the Willamette Valley. The distance between Portland and Eugene is about 100 miles. So from north to south, 100 miles. And the distance from east to west in this massive agricultural zone of the Willamette Valley, east to west is about 40 or 50 miles. depending on the horizontal extent of the watershed. Now, if I was to ask you, how the heck could you possibly regenerate something that's 100 miles by 40 miles? And the answer is, notice the fractal pattern. That the same thing I showed you in those 3 little watersheds around Eugene are replicated across the Willamette Valley. Now, I did not color in all of them. If I colored in all of them, there might be 20, there might be 30, but if you had a local management framework for each of these watersheds, it's possible to imagine its regeneration, which means now, through parallel organizing in all of these smaller tributaries, you can imagine the Willamette River Valley, this massive system, being regenerated. Now, how would you go up to the bioregional scale? Well, a major part of the definition of Cascadia is the Columbia River Basin, which has the same land area as the drainage of the Colorado River. This is frickin' huge. How the hell would you regenerate that? Well, notice right there is the Willamette Valley. You see, you just replicate the same pattern as nested levels of organizing, and now instead of 30 or 40 watersheds, maybe it's 200. But you're doing the same kind of local organizing nested into a larger system, which is nested into a larger system, which in this case is organized by mountain ranges and geology and the drainage of multiple watersheds into the Columbia River Basin. And now you see how bioregional organizing is fractal and nested, and you organize locally while thinking about the larger systems that your local organizing is a part of. Now, what's really amazing is you could go all the way out to the Cascadia level, because this is a powerful way to organize landscapes. So this is a map of all the watersheds of Cascadia, and the blue part in the lower right is the Columbia Basin. The yellow part in the middle is the Fraser River that drains into Vancouver, British Columbia. Now notice that we could imagine a mycelial web of local organizing spreading across Cascadia. Maybe we organize around Vancouver Island, the Fraser River, and the Salish Sea. Maybe we organize the Snake River that drains into the Columbia River Basin coming out of Wyoming. Or maybe we imagine other watersheds where we have local organizing nested up to the larger scale. Being able to see this way of organizing across scales is how we do bioregional organizing. Now, this doesn't just apply to Cascadia, because the entire planet's living systems are organized by the movements of water. So you go out to the entire planet and see that you could organize locally in this way to create bioregional frameworks of regeneration for South Africa, for the Mongolian Plateau, for the arid landscapes of Australia, for the Amazon Basin in South America, and so on. So the question becomes, all right, you showed me that you could organize around watersheds and humans could manage it, but what are the structures from organizing the humans? How do humans organize themselves to regenerate their bioregions? This is a big part of the practice of bioregional organizing. And here again, we say the same thing we said before. Just like the story of place is organized by the land, the bioregional organizing is also organized by land. And there are 3 primary structures that we need to work with. The first one is we need to understand, how do people learn how to live in this place? Last year, we did an entire 6-month learning journey on the birthing of bioregional learning centers and learning ecosystems. So one of the ways of organizing your bioregion is to organize all of the ways of learning about your place. This is geospatial mapping. This is hydrological and geological studies. This is the study of cultural history. This is learning about the restoration efforts that are happening in your place. This is learning the kind of economy that Indigenous people have had and the kinds of economies we have today. This is how we educate our children. This is how we retrain people for a different kind of workforce. It's everything in an ecosystem of learning that is organized by our landscapes so that we can have bioregional learning ecosystems. This is a major way of organizing human activities. Now, another major way of organizing is to create processes of territorial funding and governance. Now, very briefly, because these are actually big buckets, what this means. Let's say you formed a watershed council, and the watershed council gathers stakeholders from the watershed to govern together. And that group of people identifies resources to mobilize into the health and well-being of the watershed. Now they are both allocating funding, determining the priorities, and monitoring how the funding is allocated. They are doing funding and governance at the watershed scale. So territorial funding and governance is a way of organizing human management around the health, well-being, restoration, and regeneration of landscape systems and bioregions. So this is a major part of the practice of bioregional organizing, is setting up bioregional learning ecosystems and setting up funding and governance systems for functional landscapes and bioregions as a whole. Now, the third major way of organizing that I've already mentioned is that we need to identify the local regenerative projects and create tapestries of those projects organized into landscape systems. That means we identify all the regenerative projects in a watershed, for example, and then we create a tapestry of them, and then we form them into an ecosystem of learning. How do we learn about this watershed? How do we learn how to practice governing this watershed? How do we learn how to mobilize resources for this watershed? How do we learn how this watershed regenerates itself? The tapestry of local projects becomes sites and forms of knowledge, and the ecosystems of learning are how we learn and practice regeneration within those landscapes. Now, while all of this is happening, all of these ways of organizing, there's a foundational component, which is the design of pro-social contexts. That we need to understand that it is impossible to do this work without a lot of cooperation. So we have to learn how to form healthy and effective functioning social groups that can do things like manage a watershed, mobilize resources, create frameworks of collaboration for different kinds of learning. The design of pro-social contexts is about recognizing that human beings have to work together with living systems and with other human beings. And guess where this usually breaks down? With the humans. So a big part of bioregional organizing is learning how to be in healthy relationships with other humans in service to the living systems of our place. This is a big part of bioregional organizing work. How do we work together? So the design immersions we talked about were about immersing ourselves in bioregional thinking. But what you can see now is that you can immerse yourself in bioregional thinking by thinking like water, by thinking like geology, by thinking like the local forest, and also by thinking like a weaver weaving the local regenerative projects, living into the story of your place. And what this tells us is that you can experience your place through narratives that are layered on top of each other. You can live through the story of the salmon. You can live through the story of the oak tree. You can live through the story of the displaced indigenous people. You can live through the story of the migrant workers who came here after being displaced from the war that's taking place in the Ukraine. You see, these multi-layered narratives are the unfolding and the emergent story of your place. And bioregional thinking helps you see how these stories come together. So we talk about this here in the design school as a platform for bioregional regeneration. One of the key pieces is bioregional learning centers. How do you create those learning ecosystems? And then there's this focus on territorial governance. As you can see right now, the US federal government is doing a shit job of helping create health and well-being in local economies and local ecosystems. It's doing the opposite. It's raping and pillaging them. So we need to create regional and territorial kinds of governance. Territorial governance, bioregional governance, is a fundamental part of the organizing of bioregions. And then there's this piece that I've talked about a little bit before, but now I'm going to name it by its professional practice. Integrated landscape management is the way of working with multi-stakeholder groups to identify the needs and the opportunities within a holistic landscape like a watershed, and then to facilitate the process of creating a shared agenda, a shared plan, mobilizing financial resources, creating the monitoring systems to track progress toward goals, and coordinating the management of large-scale holistic landscapes. That's called integrated landscape management. Right now, the design school is in a beautiful conversation with 1,000 Landscapes for a Billion People, which has developed learning modules in integrated landscape management that help people practice these as advanced skills. And we're working on bringing that into the design school later this year You can get deep training in multi-stakeholder mapping, in the facilitation of creating a collective budget, in funding a landscape scale regenerative process, and other things. So this integrated landscape management component is a major part of bioregional organizing. And then creating a robust circulation of value. We talk about community philanthropy, flow funding, regenerative finance models, the robust circulation of value flow among the learning ecosystems, the governing processes, and the regeneration of our landscapes all are happening together. And this, as an integrated platform, is how you organize for the regeneration of a bioregion. What are some of the elements? One is that there's this active weaving of people and projects within the local landscapes. This is of, by, and for the local people. This grows the cooperative abilities of the local people as they do this work. And it deepens the organizational capacities for the organizations that are there. This is about strengthening the ability for sovereignty and governance within local organizations and local networks. And this gives rise to the birth of a regenerative economy if you do it well. So the path to regenerative economies is bioregional organizing, and it's done by seeing the world as a bioregional weave and then going out and weaving it through the learning ecosystems, territorial funding and governance, and tapestries of projects. So what does it feel like to do this? Most of the time it's like, I don't know, that's a lot. I'm confused. Other times it feels like this. What the hell? What is going on? I can't believe that's happening. This sucks. Serious. This is hard work. But sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, human beings are amazing. What did we just do? I can't believe we pulled that off. Said another way, this path that I'm describing is a roller coaster of emotions. And you will feel it all if you do bioregional organizing. I'm not kidding. So, one of the ways that you can begin to practice, to explore the practice of bioregional organizing, is through the various ways that I've described. You can explore your story of place. You can even go to the Regenesis group, which has a structured process to create a story of place for regenerative development. Check out Regenesis group. They do this beautifully. You can explore your story of place. You can convene local actors and explore it together through design immersions and other things that we've been talking about. Or you could just walk your landscapes and feel it and live it. What is happening in that watershed? What's happening on my urban street? What's happening in my neighborhood? Feel it and breathe it into yourself to learn how to have that bioregional mind. You can also do all kinds of things to learn how your bioregion works. You can go and get an undergraduate or graduate degree. You could go to a local cultural center or a local museum or a local farmer's market, and you can learn how your bioregion works through lots of different ways. Then, as you do that, you're going to come into some scary and sad things and some beautiful things. So the more you come into relationship with your bioregion, the more capacity you have to hold grief and love about what is increasingly your identity for your bioregion as your home, the place where you belong. And from there, you can dream of regenerative futures based in that love and gratitude for your place. And then you build the structures we talked about. You can work on a bioregional learning center. You can set up patterns of landscape or territorial governance. You can weave local projects and initiatives. You could do integrated landscape management. You can build the structures of bioregional organizing. So this work is emergent, interactive, messy, complicated. I am not selling it like it's a beautiful, like, get rich quick and it's so freaking easy. No, it's not easy. It's emergent, it's messy, and it's complicated. You will experience conflict, trauma, confusion, doubt, and you'll feel it more than once. And this makes it a path of spiritual devotion. This is not the work for the weak of heart. This is the work for the lovers. This is the work for the dreamers. This is the work of the artists, and this is the work of the healers. This is a spiritual path. So design immersions let us practice all of this. So just to remind us, a design immersion is the application of tools and knowledge to address some kind of a challenge where you immerse yourself with other people having direct experiences in the world at the holistic scale of design thinking through bioregional frameworks and bioregional points of view. And as you bring that together, you are organizing your bioregion. So there are hundreds of design school members. This map is outdated, but look, there are members of the design school all over the world. So luckily, you're not alone. When I started doing this 6 years ago in Barichara, Colombia, I was alone and it sucked. But here we are in the design school now, and we're a community of practice and we can learn from each other. So if you go and do a design immersion in your local landscape, you're going to have people from all over the world to learn with here in the design school. And this is one of those huge benefits of a planetary network of bioregions. We have to support and care for each other. And as I said earlier, we have to hold each other with compassion and kindness because the work is going to be hard and the road is going to be long. So this is what it means to explore the practice of bioregional organizing. Stand in the world with a bioregional mind, look out into the fragmented landscape of regenerative projects and see the potential for weaving, and then begin weaving. But do so with as much grounding and discernment of reality as you possibly can.